My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Alright, today we are reviewing an AVI-8 Flyboy that was generously lent into the channel by a friend. So this is my first experience with AVI-8, so I was excited to get my hands on one and check it out. So as always, we'll do specifications, pros, cons, and if I think this watch is worth the money. However, before we begin, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So a quick word on pricing and availability. As of the recording of this video, this watch does not appear to be for sale anymore on the AVI-8 website, but I did see it listed on some third-party websites for $289. So starting with the case, it's 42 millimeters in diameter, it's 50 millimeters lug to lug, it's 13 millimeters thick, and then we have a 22 millimeter lug width opening. The case is mostly all brushed. You mostly have brushing on the top. It's very consistent through the bracelet, and then is brushed on the side. There is a small high polished chamfered edge along the side there. The lugs do curve down gently, which is helpful when you are wearing the watch, and then there's a nice kind of slant there on the bezel that kind of leads into the dome of that crystal. Overall, the finishing on this case is what you would expect for this price point, and the all brushed look is good for this toolish sort of fleeker look. The bracelet on this watch is actually really nice. So you start at a solid end link. There's a little bit of play, but actually it's not that bad. It does start at 22 millimeters, tapers down to 18 millimeters, and then back up to 20 on this signed double push deployment. You have a safety class that's signed with AVI-8. It's all milled out on the inside here, and then you do have 3 micro positions to find the right size. It's all brushed a 5-link style. It's very comfortable, and while this might look like it's a hair puller, it does not pull hairs. You have full articulation down the side, and then even the articulation between the links, it's so good that you can basically stack them. So it's an incredibly comfortable bracelet. And then sizing is accomplished with just push pins. So checking out the case back, we have a screw-in case back. Now this watch only has 50 meters of water resistance, and I guess it's kind of what you'd expect for a Flieger style. You know, this isn't a diver, but just keep that in mind if you're considering this watch. But there's this really cool kind of motif of a pilot here, and it says Flyboy. And this makes a lot of sense because just browsing the AVI-8 website, most of their watches are based around planes, people, and the history of military aviation. And then this is going to be powered by the Seiko NH35. That's a hacking, hand-winding, 21,600 vibration per hour movement with a 41-hour power reserve and a stated accuracy of -20 to +40 seconds per day. Although in my experience, it usually runs about -10 to +10 seconds a day, and this does feature a quick set date. So I absolutely love the crown on this watch. It's 7 millimeters, and going with that Flieger style, it's an onion crown, and it is signed with the bullseye. It's very easy to operate the watch, wind the watch with this crown, and then it just looks really cool on the watch itself. So there is a domed sapphire crystal here, and it is coated with an AR treatment, which makes it easier to view the dial in certain lighting conditions, and then it offers some pretty cool distortions with that domed crystal. So always good to see sapphire, and then always good to see an AR coating applied. So historically, I haven't really liked textured dials, but they're really starting to grow on me, and this one is very cool. So it starts in the middle, it's more gold, but then it kind of fades to black as you go out to the edges of the dial, and then the chapter ring is all black. We have Arabic numerals that are applied, and I love that they used a 0 for the 12. It just adds a little bit of character to the watch. And then printed on an inner circle with it, moving in towards the center of the dial, you have the military times 13 through 24, just AVI-8 at 12 o'clock, Flyboy, and automatic in red, which offers a nice small splash of color, and then you have the framed date window there at the 3 o'clock position. And then you actually also have applied indices on the chapter ring itself. So there's that triangle and 2 dots at 12 o'clock, which help with orientation of the watch. And then there is also an applied index at each of the hour markers with a slightly longer one at 3, which I think helps balance out the dial. There's a little bit of negative space between the aperture for the date window and the edge of the dial. And I think that longer index there just kind of balances it all out. So it is a busy dial, but relative to AVI-8's other models, which can be very busy, it's a lot less busy, and I think there's just enough going on that it's interesting, but it's still extremely legible and easy to read. And then you have a nice sword style set of hands here. Now, my one complaint on these hands, They are edged in black, and while that is cohesive with the color scheme of the watch itself, it does make, and especially from a distance, it makes the watch hands look slightly smaller, which I don't like. If you actually look, the hands are quite long. They go all the way to that chapter ring. That minute hand is terminating at that chapter ring. But from a distance, they look smaller than they are, and I think you could easily change that by edging them in a different color. And then I do love that second hand. It has that bullseye motif that's also present on the crown there, and it's a beautiful gold color that matches the rest of the gold and black scheme of the watch overall. So the lume on this watch is not very good. It's not very responsive, it's not very bright, and it doesn't last very long. However, this is a Flieger style watch, so it's not really supposed to have killer lume, but I always like to see killer lume. So popping in on the Timegrapher, getting a great result, minus 1 second a day. Like I said, the stated tolerance for these NH35s is minus 40 to plus 20 seconds, but in my experience, you usually get between minus 10 and plus 10 seconds a day. Healthy amplitude, minimal beat error. Here is the watch sized up for my 6 3/4 inch wrist, and it's about as big as I would want to go. It's 50 millimeters lug to lug and then 42 millimeters in diameter, but it is a Flieger style watch, and these are supposed to be bigger watches. So I think it is the correct size for the style of the watch, and I think I can just barely pull it off on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. So pros and cons, starting with the pros. Well, I love the dial on this thing. From that textured pattern to the way it fades from gold in the middle to black around the edges. It's really interesting and super legible at the same time. And then this bracelet is extremely comfortable. It's one of the most comfortable bracelets I've ever worn. And then third, I love that you get a sapphire crystal here with AR coating. I always like to see that on my watches. As for the cons, well, we covered this. The hands appear smaller due to being edged in black. I would really like to see them not edged in black at all, just to make them look larger, and they kind of reach all the way out to the edges of the dial that way. And then second, while this is a Flieger style watch and it's not supposed to be meant to have really strong lume, the lume is quite weak, and I would just really like to see stronger lume in this case. So is this one worth the money? Well, this is a fun Flieger style watch, and at $300 with a sapphire crystal, I think you're getting your money's worth. You have a lot of options in Flieger watches. So you could spend $100 more and move up to a Laco, which is a very, it's a more storied brand with Fliegers, or you could spend $100 less and go for another micro and get a Long Island watch, pilot style watch. But both of these are going to be way more traditional. This one it's just way more fun with that textured dial, and it has a lot more character. And then the bracelet is really, really nice. So if you're drawn to it, I don't think you can go wrong here, but I would really like to see better lume for me to consider this watch to be a full value town. So there you have it, the AVI-8 Flyboy. Let me know what you guys think about this watch in the comments below. As always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.